Millions watched Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed Shadows trailer, but in September 2024, the company's stock dropped to a decade low, below €10. How can a billion-dollar empire dominate global attention and still lose investor faith overnight? The answer is not just in the game. It is in the gamble Ubisoft made with its very identity. What really happens when a studio bets everything on vision over value? Ubisoft's financial statements for fiscal year 2024 to 2025 read like a warning. The company reported €159 million in losses, erasing profits from previous years, and sending a chill through the boardroom. Net bookings, the core measure of game sales and digital content, fell 20.5% to €1.85 billion. That single figure represents hundreds of thousands of missing pre-orders, expansions left unsold, and a player base that simply stopped buying in. In 12 months, Ubisoft's share price dropped by more than half, wiping out over €1.5 billion in market value. For a company once valued at over €3 billion, this kind of slide is not a stumble. It is a free fall. Shareholders demanded answers. Chief Executive Officer Yves Guillemot stood before analysts and did not sugarcoat the crisis. He said, "We are seeing overperformance from competitors while Ubisoft has not met its sales targets." The gap was no longer theoretical. Star Wars Outlaws, a title with a world-class license and years of marketing behind it, fell significantly short of projections. Ubisoft had counted on a tentpole hit, but instead it faced another disappointment. The company's debt load grew heavier as revenue missed forecasts, and layoffs, 1,500 in total, were announced to stem the bleeding. In quarterly calls, executives pointed to a shrinking pipeline and delayed releases. X-Defiant, once pitched as a free-to-play answer to Call of Duty, was quietly shut down in June 2025 after failing to build an audience. Other projects were pushed out to 2026 or shelved entirely. The numbers told a simple story. Ubisoft was making games but losing money on almost every front. Every failed launch and missed target deepened the sense of urgency. The old playbook, with big franchises, annual sequels, and live service bets, was no longer delivering results. For the first time in decades, Ubisoft's leadership faced the possibility that the company's core strategy was broken. The numbers left no room for denial. Something drastic had to change. Inside Ubisoft's headquarters, a new doctrine swept through the upper ranks, the so-called firebreak. This was not a memo or a town hall announcement, but an unmistakable shift in how projects were greenlit and managed. Longtime creative leads found their pitches filtered through a new set of priorities, and every major release now required approval from a panel focused on modern audience appeal. The old guard who built franchises around historical immersion and mechanical depth watched as their input was sidelined in favor of external consultancy and internal mandates. Sweet Baby Inc. became a regular presence in creative meetings. Their feedback was not just advisory, it became a gatekeeper. Scripts, character arcs, even marketing beats were rewritten to align with diversity, equity, and inclusion targets before any gameplay system or historical reference was considered. Ubisoft's internal teams were instructed to prioritize representation and safe content over the elements that once defined their hits: historical accuracy, complex systems, and risk-taking design. The firebreak meant more than new faces on character posters. It restructured hiring too. Junior staff with backgrounds in cultural analysis or advocacy were promoted to lead roles, sometimes leapfrogging veteran designers. Project managers with limited technical experience now oversaw teams, enforcing new communication protocols and running workshops on inclusive storytelling. For some, this was a chance to reshape the industry. For others, it created friction. Senior engineers and writers left quietly, replaced by teams less familiar with the franchise's roots or the expectations of their core player base. Meetings grew tense as creative differences hardened into policy. Feedback from long-standing fans was labeled as toxic or outdated, and internal dissenters found themselves reassigned or managed out. The firebreak was not simply a change in direction. It became a firewall designed to block out the old Ubisoft and usher in a new era. But in the process, the link between studio and audience began to fray. The company's identity, once forged by the passion of its teams and the loyalty of its fans, now felt dictated by outside consultants and abstract targets. The cost of this pivot would soon be measured not just in lost sales, but in lost trust. Assassin's Creed Shadows hit YouTube with a wave of anticipation, and within hours, a wave of outrage. The reveal trailer featuring Yasuke as the lead in a feudal Japan setting drew over 100,000 dislikes by the end of launch week. Comment sections filled with accusations of historical revisionism and calls for authenticity. Japanese fans circulated a petition demanding Ubisoft reconsider the protagonist choice, gathering tens of thousands of signatures in days. The backlash did not stay confined to gaming circles. Elon Musk weighed in on X, posting the phrase "diversity, equity, and inclusion kills art," which quickly trended and became a rallying cry for critics. Influencers and streamers amplified the controversy, dissecting the trailer on live streams and calling out what they saw as a disconnect between Ubisoft's vision and the expectations of longtime players. Hashtag #NotMyAssassin's surged across platforms, and negative sentiment dominated Reddit threads and gaming forums. The viral momentum spilled over into financial circles. A J Investments, a mid-sized shareholder, published an open letter to Ubisoft's board, citing the social media firestorm as evidence of lost brand direction. The letter demanded an emergency review of leadership and creative oversight, warning that continued alienation of the core audience would accelerate the company's decline. Meanwhile, platform analytics showed a dramatic spike in negative engagement. Dislike ratios eclipsed all previous franchise launches, and search trends for Assassin's Creed Shadows controversy overtook even launch day buzz. In the span of 2 weeks, what began as a marketing event morphed into a public referendum on Ubisoft's identity. The conversation was no longer about a single trailer. It was about whether the company could recognize the gap between its own ambitions and the values of its audience. While Ubisoft wrestled with internal upheaval and public backlash, its competitors charted a different course that paid off. Game Science released Black Myth, Wukong, and within weeks, industry analysts reported over 20 million units sold. The game's approach was simple but effective: respect the source material, deliver on gameplay promises, and trust the audience's appetite for authenticity. Wukong's launch was not just a commercial win. It became a global phenomenon, drawing players from every region and dominating streaming platforms. The numbers spoke for themselves, with revenue estimates topping $1 billion in the first month alone. From Software, the studio behind Elden Ring, followed a similar philosophy. Instead of chasing trends or rewriting their formula, they doubled down on what worked: challenging combat, deep lore, and a fierce commitment to quality. Elden Ring's profitability stunned even seasoned analysts. The game sold over 20 million copies in its first year, and its player engagement remained strong long after launch. Forums, social media, and review sites overflowed with praise for its design and respect for its roots. In contrast, Ubisoft's pipeline stalled. Delays mounted. Flagship titles slipped from 2025 to 2026, or vanished from release calendars altogether. Projects that once generated excitement now triggered skepticism. Every announcement was met with questions about direction, quality, and whether the company could deliver. Player counts for Ubisoft's live service games dwindled, and communities migrated elsewhere. The gap between those who built a bridge to their audience and those who jumped off a cliff became impossible to ignore. Competitors thrived by honoring their fans and their craft. Ubisoft, once an industry leader, found itself left behind, watching others cross the finish line while its own future hung in the balance. Today, Ubisoft trades at a fraction of its former value, while millions of players look elsewhere. In a world where brand loyalty can vanish overnight, one misstep can erase decades of trust. The lesson? Attention is fleeting, and credibility, once lost, is nearly impossible to reclaim. What matters most now